Hey guys, Peter here, and welcome to day 4 of our countdown before we are launching the Inside Track, an inspirational guide to conquering adversity. And each letter or each chapter of the 11 chapters was the letter that I wrote from when I was put into a contempt of court situation last year, and all packed with a lot of knowledge and wisdom that I was sharing with my coaching clients that I now want to share with the world. And if you've been following the updates and the countdown, you'll notice that yesterday we talked about the role that fear plays when you're in a dangerous environment and how it shuts down the IQ biochemically. And also understanding different aspects of human behavior and the patterns that we run. And when we do something and we address just the surface issue that we think is the behavior, we go down a blind alley. So, if you've not been watching the countdown videos, please go back. I'm trying to put as much value in these as I can for you guys to try to be able to make a difference with you now, to be able to handle any challenge or adversity that you're currently going through. And today is day 4. So, the title of the chapter for day 4 in the book is called Against the Tide. And that's because I was trying to help the system from the inside and being shut down. I was literally swimming upstream to try to help people. And I discovered that especially political-based institutions do not like being helped from the inside. That's starting to change now thanks to some of the stuff I was doing there, and I explain a little bit more about that in the book, something I called Operation Chrysalis. I also talk in chapter 4 about some of the people I'm working with, some of the prisoners that are the most depressed, or one guy who was a crack and heroin addict for 15 years that befriended me, and I was going through trying to get this guy to a whole different level, and when we finally parted company, he was off methadone. We just made massive transformations, and a lot of other people that you tend to be introduced to, which in a normal book would probably be characters in the story, but these are real people, and I'm very blessed that in the book as well you see a lot of letters from these people in terms of what they went through and how they've managed to overcome it themselves, and a few other aspects of what they wanted to share with you as the audience. So very excited for that. We're also going to talk about the difference between liberty and freedom, because understanding that was a game changer inside prison. You see, liberty is your ability to be at large, and liberty is the only thing that they take away in prison. Now, freedom is a state of mind. People can have liberty but feel completely in the prison of an unhappy marriage or a job that they hate. You can take somebody's passport away and they feel that they have no liberty. Or somebody who unfortunately doesn't have the use of their legs can feel that their liberty is taken away. But freedom is a state of mind. How do you cultivate that? Because one thing that the only thing that they were able to take away from me was liberty. They could never take my freedom. And that's a whole different aspect of how to show up. And when I was teaching this to some of the most institutionalized prisoners, it was a game changer. And so again, we talk about that and the distinction around that in volume 4. But I also wanted to share with you something I'm very excited and passionate about. Now remember, I'm writing these letters to my high-level advanced coaching students. And so I'm teaching them stuff that I wouldn't normally teach in my normal seminars. And one of the aspects of what I was teaching, especially in this volume that we mentioned or touched on yesterday, was active meditation. Passive meditation, if you recall, we went over this on the day 3 countdown. Passive meditation is where you learn how to quiet the physical and mental data stream that's coming in to your conscious awareness and sort of reach a point of what I call point consciousness. Active meditation is where once you've reached point consciousness, you use intention to influence probability in the physical world. Now, material scientists will say that's impossible, but I'm here to assert that's because they aren't very... credible is not the right word, because they do have qualifications, but they are belief blind. And fortunately, a lot of scientists now are more committed to avoiding the data that doesn't fit their hypothesis, rather than do what a true scientist should do, which is continually move their hypothesis to fit new and consistent data. And so I just want to share a quick model with you, why I've got the flip chart here, to understand is passive meditation real and how it works. Active meditation. So over this side, we have, let's call it Newtonian physics. Now this is the rule set that governs the physical world, and we understand those rules with such precision that we can put a man on the moon or predict where the tides are going to be within the next 300 years. Yeah, now it governs the sciences predominantly of physics, which relates to particles. It governs molecules, which is chemistry, and it governs biology, which is cells. They're the three predominant rule sets that Newtonian physics has mastered the art of being able to predict. Now, according to Newtonian physics, there is only the physical world and nothing else exists, or nothing else can impact the physical world. Over here, we have metaphysics. This is everything that's outside of the physical world. Consciousness would be an aspect of that. See, when you dream, your dreams are metaphysical. That you can't put them in a bottle and sell them. And the metaphysical world is not subject to the laws of the physical world. So when you decide, for example, in a dream or through your imagination to see yourself flying, you're not having to deal with gravity that exists over here. So, a Newtonian scientist who is belief blind that this is all there is and that these two can never touch is working off an outdated paradigm. Now, the other thing is that the metaphysics community is very much about, oh no, law of attraction, meditate on checks in the mail and they'll show up. Well, if you try that, most people find they get an eviction notice show up, not a check in the mail. But this is because the two traditionally has been the domain of spirituality, the church, religion, etc., and the domain of science, and never the twain shall meet. But how does that show up in a practical sense? How can you actually understand this in a way that allows you to use active meditation to actually affect the physical world? And that is because in my mind, we have Newtonian physics here, and we have metaphysics, but there is an area of overlap. Now, how we influence this area here is through what's called intention and emotion. Intention is really the ability to direct your focus through will. What are you doing with your will? You're not necessarily moving your arms, but with your spiritual will. What are you garnering your energy for in terms of a purpose, in terms of a focus? Now, we know scientifically, beyond any shadow of a doubt, in virtually all of the most credible scientific labs on the planet, that this happens. They don't know why it happens, because it doesn't fit the model, so they ignore it. And Newtonian physicists that are belief blind will ignore this and say it doesn't exist. When, if you go to, I'll just give you a couple of examples to blow that out of the water and shake people up a little to get with the modern lingo. And that is that if you go to somewhere like Pear Labs, Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Center. Now, Pear Labs, bearing in mind Princeton is where Albert Einstein spent the last nearly 30 years of his life teaching. It does immaculate science with completely immaculate protocols. This isn't somebody trying to do an experiment on YouTube out of their bedroom. So Princeton have demonstrated repeatedly, at odds against of over 1 billion to 1 in chance, which is more than most other scientific protocols, that the mind can affect matter. It affects it statistically on random number generators through things like remote viewing or remote healing, and it makes total sense if you look at it from a quantum physics perspective. In quantum physics in 1929, we knew that the world wasn't just particles, that particles didn't actually exist unless we looked at them. When we look at them, or more accurately, when we measure them, they actually form and collapse from a wave into a particle. Prior to that, they are probability distributions. Now, without getting too much into this, because I don't want to take up this into a physics lesson, what it means is that when you look at your screen of your phone and you see the icons on there, and you swipe left and those icons are replaced by a new set of icons, where did the first set go? Well, you're no longer looking at them, so they moved out. Spatially, we think third dimensionally, oh, they're on this side of the phone, but we know that's not true because they're not there. That's how the brain projects. But if we swipe back, they're there. If we swipe across, they're no longer there. We have a different screen. What we're looking at is our data stream. What's brought into our data stream when we measure it becomes our reality. When we don't look at it, it goes into a state of possibility. That's how the double slit experiment is very easily explained, and it doesn't validate any laws of science once you understand that particles are probability distribution. Anyway, one other thing that everybody will be able to relate to, the placebo effect. I mean, when we talk about science in the traditional sense doesn't believe that metaphysics over here can affect physics over here, how can they say that when the law says it can? What do I mean? Well, the placebo effect essentially has the basis of saying that what we think about the medicines we take affects the body. Now that shouldn't work in this scenario, but clearly it does. In fact, if you actually want to get a drug approved by the FDA in the US or the MCA in the UK, you have to prove that it works better than a placebo. And interestingly, a lot of the drugs that are on the market only outperform the placebo by a very small margin. Would you believe the biggest selling antidepressant outperformed a sugar pill that was given in a double-blind controlled study by 2%? In other words, you have 98% of the same effects if you take a sugar pill, but you believe it's an antidepressant, right? What's causing that? The mind, right? So this obviously works. Now, learning how to work with intention is being able to master, let's call that 0% and 100%, be able to master that level. In fact, the more you start mastering the laws of the metaphysics to influence probability, the wider this sort of circle becomes. And we see some of the masters, people like the old yogis that can master, being able to fly, if you believe that, which if you're in this camp, you won't. Or Sai Baba, who was very famous for being able to manifest out of the material air, ash or small trinkets. Well, once you know how it works and that physical matter reality is a subset of something more fundamental, a superset, which is essentially consciousness derived, it all makes sense. Anyway, my point being is, in volume 4 or chapter 4 of the Inside Track, I go into a lot of detail on the actual step-by-step instructions on how to be able to master this. How do you use it? Now, does that mean that you can all go out and become rich? No, and you'll understand why when you read chapter 4. It doesn't work that way. You can influence probability, but there are no absolutes in probability distributions. But you can stack the odds in your favor. And there's ways that you can understand why intention does work sometimes, or the law of attraction does work sometimes, and why it doesn't. And I break down the awarenesses, the analogies, the metaphors, and the components, so that if you've been trying to use the law of attraction, if you've been trying to manifest things and you've given up because it doesn't work, or it's intermittent, you'll have a whole different understanding and framework when you go into chapter 4 of the Inside Track. So I break that down. But hopefully that's given you a little bit of understanding as to where that crossover point is, because we do have the power to influence, to an extent, physical matter reality outside of the strictly isolated Newtonian paradigm that governs the rule sets of particles, molecules, and cells. So I hope that's useful, and I hope you're getting excited about the book. I mean, literally, I was trying to put so much value into this for my clients, which is why when I came out, they all said, listen, the world needs to read this, and I'm so excited to share it with you. Please stay with us. Tomorrow is going to be chapter 5. I've got some really exciting things to share with you on there, including how I was teaching the prisoners to get their cardio workout done in 60 seconds, giving virtually the equivalent benefit in health as somebody that spends 20 plus minutes on a treadmill. How do we do that? Well, I might share some of that with you tomorrow, along with some of the other things that I was doing inside to really try to make a difference. Guys, thank you so much for being with me. I'm excited. Please feel free to share or comment. Make sure you're subscribed to the event page. And I will see you guys tomorrow on day 5 of the countdown. We are almost there.